Anybody and everybody who might be watching, this is LXT Zombie with another weekday upload. I am not on my usual PC because it's been shitting itself, so I decided to go ahead and record this video off of my Xbox, which is actually where I designed this entire thing. If you guys want to help support me in order to finance a new one and get back to actual good uploads and with that are nice and edited and stuff, please remember to leave a like, comment, subscribe, turn on bell notifications. I'm just, trying to stall here while make sure that everything is up and running properly. The audio sounds good, and it is sounding good. I believe I'm actually kind of screaming a little bit, which is usually the Xbox picks it up a little bit lower. I just want to change my skin here because I'm uncomfortable with this, whatever this guy is supposed to be here in the background. So today, what I have for you guys is going to be a combination lock, one of the nicest looking combinations locks I've ever come across. Usually they're real big and bulky, and this one actually uses a pretty cool interface. Before I do get into it though, I want to give a quick shout out to Ollie Gaming on YouTube as well as Einsoft. So both of their I won't be able to include any of their description or their channels in the description. It's not like I do normally anyways, but these are their YouTube channel names if you guys want to go check them out. Einsoft made a super in-depth video regarding his process in making how he made his, and his is way better than mine is. I won't lie, it's super fast. You can enter up to 3 digits a second, which I mean we can't even. I don't even think that's humanly possible to go that fast, but it was huge, a huge inspiration for me, and I wouldn't have came across Ollie Gaming's channel, nor would I have gotten the idea if it wasn't for him. So shout out to that person, and also again shout out to Ollie Gaming. Basically, Ollie Gaming came up with the circuits back here that Einsoft then adapted and improved upon in order to make it faster and actually be able to keep up with what's going on or what his standards. So the way this thing works is you pick out a specific code, and then the only time this torch right here will turn on, or in other words, whenever the only time we will unlock the repeaters here and allow this signal to pass through is whenever you input the correct code. So you guys will notice if I just sit here and input a whole bunch of different numbers, it will send a signal through the machine. So if I'm fast enough to show you guys here, it sends a signal through, but it doesn't start unlocking any of the repeaters until you input the correct numbers. So if you input the code here, I have it set to 417. You guys will see that the lamp now turns on. I will let you guys know that it isn't on par with Einsoft. So if I do this, hold on. If I do it too fast, there is a chance that it could mess up. However, it's fast enough that I think I'm gonna be happy. In order for me to fit it inside my library build coming up here sometime soon, and I'll give you guys a more in-depth tour with that. I won't be going super in-depth as to how to build the Ollie Gaming's part, just because it's not terribly complicated, and you could just probably take a screenshot and go ahead and build it for yourself. I will be giving you guys though a material list for that part specifically. Basically, if for every digit you add on to your code, you're gonna need these amount of materials here, and I didn't count the actual inputs because I have quite a bit different variations. So over here we have a different one, or actually this one over here is a different one, and I forgot to count it before I started streaming, so I decided I would just go ahead and again do the same thing where I just fly around and you guys can take a look at it, and I will probably build it separately here just so you guys can have a block by block tutorial as to how you would go about building one of these yourself. So I do want to just get into a quick again just fly around. You guys can take screenshots, pause the video where you can, And then I actually wouldn't even recommend building this one. This is probably my favorite one right here. I think it's one of the nicest looking designs, and it's also the most compact I could come up with in the last 2 hours that I was working on this. I didn't want to work on it anymore. I came to a point where I couldn't really make it any more compact, and I was starting to struggle to make it compact, and it would have started looking ugly. And I'm actually super happy with this. You guys will notice that everything I've managed to make it so that all the redstone fits underneath the actual machine. So the only thing you need to worry about in terms of real estate that you're going to require for the machine, or in other words, the dimensions that you're going to need for the machine on top or in the surface, is going to be a 2 blocks tall by 5 blocks deep and then 3 blocks wide space here. And I believe that's actually, you can get away with everything else being underground and underneath the machine itself, which is probably going to be one of the best ways to go about this. And I'll even show you guys. I know there's probably going to be at certain times where you want the code circuits to be lower. So I'll probably even show you guys how I snake the signals downward. I didn't want to make it too complicated, and I wanted to cut back on material costs, which is why mine is lacking in terms of iron softs. So I did want to just give you guys a quick explanation as to how the unlocking or the lock actually works. So if I just reset this guy real quick, I'll try and give you guys, I can't really slow it down, I can't get fancy, but I'll try and verbalize it as best as I can. So what's going on is, or before I get into this, right? Before I get into how we're, or actually, maybe I lied. Maybe I'll go for how I made it so that it's possible for us to use the actual bookcase as an interface. So you guys can see here, I can decide the signal strength that is being sent out from the bookcase itself. So it goes all the way up. In this orientation, it goes up to 9. But I did tell you guys I'll go ahead and build another one. And then in that second one that I build, I'll have it go up to 12 using the entirety of both the bookcases here. So to begin with, the one on the top is pretty easy to work with. This one, we can just read a signal from it straight up. Because we don't have to do any fancy, we don't need to add to the signal or okay, I'm getting ahead of myself. What I'm trying to say is the way these bookshelves work is, let me move some stuff around in my inventory. I'm gonna need one of these eventually. So the way these bookshelves work is every time that you input, every time that you power them, or every time that you place a book inside of them, it'll update. I'm sorry, guys. I apologize. I had no script. I just ran straight into this. So every time that you update it by either adding a book or removing it, one, it can be detected by an observer, and keep that in mind. That's going to come in handy here in a second. And two, it has a comparator behind it. If you add a comparator to read off of it, it adds a different signal strength depending on which position or which block you place the book inside of, or whatever. So if I were to make a quick interface, again, I'm going to make this one go up to 12 just to show you guys how to build the one on the very end. So what's going on here, right? The comparator is reading a signal off of the bookcase, and it goes off of the most recent book that was inputted into the bookcase. And the signal strength it gives off depends on which slot the book is inputted into. So it goes from left to right, up and down, just as like if you're reading a book. And the signal goes up in increments of 1 with every book that you add on. So starting at the top left here, we have 1, 2, 3, all the way down to 6 here. And you guys can see we have 6 redstone lamps turned on. If you want to change what signal is being sent, you just update it by either removing or adding the book or adding the book back. So for example, if I were to remove these books, right? If I add a book, it moves it to that corresponding input, and in the same way, you know, if you remove it, it does the same. It has the same effect. So that's how we're able to start reading off of the bookcase here, and it's pretty easy when it comes to deciding, you know, when it comes to the top bookshelf, it's pretty easy to just, you know, go from 1 through 6. Things get a little bit more complicated once you start using the second bookcase, because if you, I mean, if you think about it, they're essentially the same block, and so it's only going to go up from a signal strength of 1 down to 6 again. So you're going to have to find a way to add on to those signal strengths, and I'll show you guys how I do that in a second. But before we get into that, let me make some more space back here. So the other thing is as well, you don't want the comparators to stay powered because, well, you just, you know, if you want to make an interface like this and you only want a pulse to be sent through, then what you have to do is you have to keep the comparator turned off by powering it using a redstone signal that's stronger than the one it's reading. Luckily, they can only go up to 6, so that's actually pretty easy to achieve. Like I said, every time you input or remove a book, it's detected by an observer. So all you have to do in order to lock it is add in a observer like this and lead a redstone signal into it. Now, before I get into that, and I am actually going to start working on the design for the fancy bookshelf here, or the fancy interface, I guess. We have to start tackling the bottom bookcase. So like I said, you need to find a way to add signal strength to it. And more specifically, we want it to start at a signal strength of 7. So if this one right here, we want it to be a signal strength of 7. And in other words, we need to add a signal strength of 6 to every input here, leading us up to a maximum signal strength of 12. So the way we're going to achieve this is, if you guys have ever taken algebra, if you multiply a negative by a negative, you get a positive. So what we're going to end up doing is we're going to subtract from a comparator and subtract from another comparator. That's 2 negatives, so the signal strength is going to turn around and is going to turn into a positive. And then we're going to make sure that we add the correct amount of items into the correct amount of signal strength and stuff like that. So I think it's easier to show you guys here than to try and explain what's going on. If I do this real quick, I'm just going to go ahead and build it, because I don't have a script, and I think the easiest way now would be to just go ahead and build it. So let me do this. Get rid of the books for now. Subtract, like this. Down here we need bookcase, and this guy needs to go up to signal strength of 6, just like that. And here inside of this barrel we need a signal strength of 12, I believe it was. And the way we're gonna, or we need the comparator in front of it to read a signal strength of 12, and the way we're going to achieve that is by adding 22 either stacks or non-stackable items into the barrel. We're missing 4 more. So now what's going to happen, if I were to re-add some of the blocks here, and reintroduce our interface. So again, this is only going to go up to a signal strength of 15. So what's going on here is we have a max signal strength of 12, which is our 12 lamps here in the background, and we're subtracting 6 from that. So at default, this comparator is always going to be at a signal strength of 6. So between a signal strength of 6 to 12. Yeah. Technically, you would really want it to go from 7 to 12, but because of the way I set it up, it's not really going to be necessary for us to uh, tackle that. So probably, the best way would be to, or actually, no, don't listen to that. I don't know what I'm talking about. So, so again, the low signal strength that we're sitting at is, or actually, yeah, I was right. This is correct. Whenever we update this bookshelf here, it's always going to be between a signal strength of 7 to 12 because the highest signal strength. So what I'm trying to say is this guy's reading a signal strength of 12, so it goes up to it powers the 12 lamps there. It allows the redstone signal to go all the way down the line here. And then this guy is reading a signal strength of 6. So it cuts it in half. It brings it down here from allowing the signal strength now to be between 6 to 12. And what we do now is once we introduce a book here, so for example, if I were to add a book in the ones slot, this would read a signal strength of 1, so it would subtract it from this one, which is reading 6, and it would turn it into 5. This will now be a signal strength of 5, which means that subtracting it from the 12, it would bring us up to 7. In the same fashion, if we add 2, bringing it to a redstone signal of 2, it would then subtract it from the 6. This would be a redstone signal of 4 now. And then we will subtract 4 from the 12, giving us a redstone signal of 8. So 1 gives us 7, 2 gives us 8, and so on. So we were able to successfully add a redstone signal of 6 to the bookcase here. And that's how we're able to now achieve that, what's it called? That subtracting, that adding 6 by multiplying a negative by, anyways. From now though, from this point, you guys will notice that this redstone signal is going to overpower the one on the top. So this is why we want to lock them and turn them off. Aside from the fact that the lock circuit requires a specific pulse to be inputted into it, it would also give us the issue if we didn't tackle this problem with the fact that if we were to try and update the first one, you guys will see now that it won't give us a redstone signal of 1 anymore. So now the way we're going to tackle this is we're going to lock our we're going to start locking our comparators here. So the bottom one, you go down like this, and it looks like I messed up here. This has to be a solid block, just like that. So you go downward, place a repeater. You can leave, if you're just making the interface, you can leave the repeater, or you can even get away without without using the repeater. So you guys will notice this would bring it all the way down. And in the same fashion, if you're just doing an interface, you wouldn't need any repeaters, and you could just bring this. One second, we need to lock. Keep these separated, and then we can bring. I guess we could, yeah. And then finally here, could do that. So now we tackle those issues that we had previously, and it gives us the power to control not only, or it makes it so now only a pulse is sent out to the specific redstone, to the specific number. It corresponds to the inputs here, so we have 1 through 12, but it also allows us to control the amount of time that that signal is sent for. So again, if you're just building the interface, this is all you need. But for the sake of the tutorial and talking about the lock next, you're gonna need a repeater set on 3 ticks, and that's why I have this weird arrangement where the Huzumawa sits, where our observers face down like this to the side. So it's not the prettiest thing in the world, but compared to what I have previously here, I actually kind of prefer it. This one uses less observers, but if you look at the really the problem arises when it comes to trying to send the signal downward. You guys can see that we have to go off into the side here because of the way that I was powering these blocks here. If I were to try and place a redstone signal, redstone dust 1 block below, this block will power it, and it was causing issues. So I rearranged things just a little bit, and I added an extra 2 observers to allow us to have this footprint. And this means also now that we can get away with adding a roof on top of it just like this, and it's flush. Whereas previously we would have to add an extra block on top of it. So this guy is 3 blocks tall, 3 blocks wide by 5 blocks deep. And that's not counting us trying to send the signal downward. So in total, or actually it would be 4 blocks deep, and if we count the signal for sending everything downward and hiding our lock underneath the floor, it would be an extra block deep and stuff. So I just prefer this one personally, but if you're trying to make just an interface like this, and you don't really care for the lock, if you just want to make something cool like this, then this would also work. This one's the same. The only difference here is that I have it going up to 9, a keypad of 9, and I'll show you guys why I have this one going up to 12 and this one going up to 9. But if you want to build the one that only goes up to 9, this is what you would have to add inside of the furnace. I believe if I were to add a signal strength here, it would just go up to 9 anyways. Technically it goes up further than that. It goes up to you're subtracting, so 6 is at 9, so you're only adding 3, so that means that this is at, I guess it would kind of, I don't know, I'm a liar, guys. I think it only goes up to 9 or something like that. So that's why I made these changes over here. But like I said, if you want to just build an interface that goes from 1 through 9, that's how you would do it. Or if you would just want to build an interface that goes from 1 through 6, you wouldn't even need the extra circuitry at the bottom. You could just get away with adding a comparator behind your bookcase and stuff like that, or however you guys might want to try and arrange it. Or maybe you even want to tackle making this look a little bit nicer than what I was able to achieve here. Be my guest. I'm just trying to teach you guys how to do it. At the same time that I'm showing you how everything, whatever. Anyways, getting into the lock now. This one's a little bit more complicated, and I don't know if you could rearrange it, but I thought I would also give you guys an explanation as to where to go from here, or how this thing works here. So now that we're able to decide what redstone signal is being outputted from our bookcase, right? Either 1, 6, 7, 12. Oh, something's wrong here. One of these is not on subtract mode, I think. Yeah, there you go. So again, 12, 8, 3, 8 again, whatever you want to do. Right now that we're able to control the redstone output and add a little bit of a delay to it, we are now free to add it onto only, what's his name's? Only Gaming's lock here. And the way this thing works is as soon as the redstone signal is sent out, the first thing that happens is, or there's actually a lot of things that happen, but the first thing that happens is this target block is powered, and then beneath it, this dropper is also powered. So the block, whatever dummy item you have inside this dropper, is pushed over to the dropper it's facing into. And then, excuse me, from there, this comparator will now turn off, or maybe let me fly to the end and I'll show you guys. So this comparator will turn off. Once that happens, while that's happening, you guys will notice that these two comparators will power, or this first comparator will power. And from here, there's 3 different scenarios that could go down. The first one is that the redstone signal we choose, so let's say we inputted 1 here at the front of the machine. The first case scenario is where the redstone signal coming in, so in this case, let's say 1, is lower than the redstone signal we have, or is lower than the redstone signal that this comparator is reading, or we have inputted inside of this lectern. So if you don't know the way it works, you look up there at the top right, and you divide that first number by 2. So it's 6. That means this lectern is outputting a redstone signal of 3. So we have a redstone signal of 3, and we have a redstone signal of 1 coming in. When that's happening, right, these two are going to start comparing that redstone signal. Or these two right here are going to start comparing that redstone signal. If the redstone signal is less than the one that's being read from the lectern, this comparator will now turn on. It won't turn on, meaning that this torch will stay powered, and and in the same sense, this repeater will stay on, and we won't be able to shut off our repeater here. The second scenario is where the redstone signal coming in is higher than the one that's being read from the lectern here. If that happens, this comparator will power, turning off the torch, turning off our redstone here. But now what will happen is, because it's higher than what's being read here, it's going to be either at a redstone signal of 2 or greater. So for example, if I inputted a redstone signal of 5 or 6 or anything like that. Okay, so I kind of messed up. The second scenario is where it's so the first scenario is really between a redstone signal that's less than or equal to what's being read inside of this lectern. Again, it would leave the torch on. The second scenario is where it's greater than what's being read here. So let's say it's a redstone signal of 5 coming in, and this is a redstone signal of 3. Take 5, subtract 3, we're going to get a redstone signal of 2. So it's going to play the same way as if this torch was still lit. So essentially nothing changed. And the only time something will be different is if we have a redstone signal coming in that's 1 greater than the one that's being read from our lectern here. So if we have a redstone signal of 4 coming in and we have a redstone signal of 3 here, you guys will notice that this comparator will power on, this torch will power off, but now down here, this redstone dust will only read a redstone signal of 1, meaning that this repeater will turn off. And at the same time that's happening, you guys will notice that what happened first was the the block inside this dropper was pushed into the one that it's facing into. Then the signals are compared. This repeater turns off, and at the same time, this block is powered, meaning that now this dropper is shooting the block back into this dropper. So what's going to happen is this comparator is going to turn right back on. And if the repeater's off while that happens, i.e. the signal strength inputted is one higher than the one being read from our lectern, it will lock it while the repeater is turned off. So if you guys, I won't be able to capture this, but if we make our way down here, you guys notice, maybe you could slow it down. You guys notice there that the repeater unlocked. The redstone signal here was at 1. It turned off this torch. The redstone signal was at a power of 1, meaning that this was off. The repeater turned off. And then right after that happens, our comparator turns back on, locking it in a state of 0 or being powered off. And what this means now is that this next module is now free to behave as if it was by itself. That's why I started at the bottom here, because there's no other modules for it to power off of. So you guys see that it's incremental. It works off of the previous module being turned off. So now what's going to happen is you can imagine this entire module has been cut off for the next input only. You have a chance, you have one chance now to input the correct number. And that's what makes this thing so nice, is because it's safe proof, it's fast, and it's compact. Super nice design. I was super impressed by this when I finally wrapped my head around it. But now, again, same scenario, and this is when we can start talking about the ones. Whenever you're trying to input 1 into your code, because we can't get a basically what I'm trying to say is a redstone signal, or the redstone signal that you input. Okay, sorry. If you're trying to whenever you're trying to pick out a code, right? These numbers here, you need to add in the lecterns. The lecterns have to read a signal strength 1 less than the ones that you want to input. So what I'm trying to say by this, right, is again, if we go back to this example of 3 and 4, if we want this repeater to turn off, we need to send a redstone signal that's 1 greater than the one that's being read from our lectern. So if you want 1 as a part of your code, you have to input a signal strength of 0. And the way you do that is by just not adding anything at all. And as a matter of fact, here you could even get rid of this comparator like so. Yeah. So you could just, if you want to input 1 into your code, you could just leave it like this. Now I'm gonna leave it just in case, I ever want to go in and change it real quick. It's just more convenient to leave it there. And if you want, if you want to take it even a step further, and this is, we're almost about to get into the books here. I'm just going to talk about 0 next in a second. But if you want to take it a step further, you can even go ahead and add in the book that you're using in order to read a signal off of. In front of it, just like this on a, again, for convenience. So this is going up to 12 here. So that's that. Now, normally the way keypads work is they go from 1 through 9, and then at the bottom here you have like an asterisk, whatever, like I think an asterisk and a pound symbol, and then 0 in between those. And the way you would code these, and I kind of messed up the book before I messed this up, I apologize, but the way you would code these is the same. You would just imagine that these down here are the asterisk, 0, and pound. But realistically, in a code, you don't use asterisks or pounds, so you would just leave this. You would just call this 0. But really, what's going on here is you're adding 6. So this is be a signal strength of 5, add 6, it's 11 now. It's at a signal strength of 11. So if you want to code 0, right, quote unquote, you would input a signal strength of 10 into your code. I believe I did have this as an example. Yeah. So again, you divide the top right number, the page that you're on by 2. And by the way, it has to go up to 30 pages, but I'll get more into the books here in a second. So the code here is 4107. So 4107. And what I did here is I went ahead and implemented a little bit of extra circuitry. It's kind of hard to see, but I'll show you guys how I did it in the bottom one. I did the same thing. I just moved it to the bottom there underneath the floor. But what this circuitry is doing here is this repeater will turn off when you input the correct code, meaning that this torch will power on. Once this torch powers on, the first thing that happens is this torch is flicked, meaning that the observer reads that. We can then send a signal back through the system, imitating a input of the keypad here, and it will turn on all of it will basically just reset the entire system for us. So you don't have to go by and do it yourself. So for this first example, the way this first example would work is you would go, you would pick up the books. This would open your door. You can go in, pick up whatever you want, or it would unlock your door, pick up whatever you want. And on your way back out, you just leave the books back inside of the chiseled bookshelf, and this will, just be careful not to input it in the same order. And this will go ahead and relock or turn off the redstone signal, relocking your door. But to get more specific with it, the way you lock it, so let's say right there is 2. The way you reset the circuit here is the same as if you were to input an incorrect number, because it won't match the right scenario where it's only one redstone signal higher than the one that's being read from our lectern. It will send an incorrect. It won't allow this repeater to be in an off state once it gets relocked, and it would the other modules will follow the same pattern, and in the end they will all get reset. So you guys can see there I'm 1 digit off in putting the correct code, but if I put something in wrong, then it'll turn off, and that'll leave us with a reset, what's it called, a reset lock there. So that's what's going on. All you have to do is just send a signal to the front here. This is a signal strength of 15, so it's not possible for us to match one of the codes that or one of the numbers that we could input. And then at the same time that's happening, at the same time that it's resetting the lock here, it's also sending a signal down to a pulse extender here. So what this pulse extender does is it just extends the pulse, self-explanatory, and it allows you to hook this up to a piston door, for example. So that way, if you, this is most likely how I'm going to make it work inside of my library, is after you input the correct code, you pick up the book and you leave it back inside of the lectern at the same time. That way we don't have to worry about them getting lost or players running away with them. And I'm gonna give them that tutorial as to how that works. And I'm actually, that's how I would prefer to go about it. And finally, now that we have working designs and we understand how everything works, we can start rearranging the actual machine and trying to find a way to fit it in a nicer format that I would prefer. This is more of preference here. So this is the same machine that I showed you guys, that I've been showing you guys, or actually that's the machine that I showed you guys how to build. But and I feel like I'm forgetting something. I apologize in advance if I forget something. I'm not gonna rewatch this. Most likely, I'm not gonna rewatch this. But here we have a code of 101. So 101. And again, same idea. It's hooked up to a pulse extender. Um, so this one's a little bit trickier. I have to send a signal downward, and because I have a better design that I'm happier with, I'm actually going to ignore this one, and I'm going to show you guys how to hook it up using the one that we already built. So what's gonna happen is, working off of this redstone signal, you're just gonna snake the signal down like this. You're gonna read it into a comparator. You're gonna read off of it a block, redstone dust, another comparator, and it goes down to this. And now you can add in, excuse me. Now you can go ahead and add in the circuitry for the lock. And I guess this is a good time to talk about the books now. Last thing before I forget. So the way these books work, and I named it 15 Infinity Plus 1. We'll get into this one in a second. So the way these books work is every flip of a page, you're adding an extra redstone signal. So if I were to just really quickly show you guys this. Yeah, so let's add a lectern. Can add a book here. So the way these books work, when you're reading off of the lectern, every flip of the page, you're adding a redstone signal. So right there, I did it too fast, so it wasn't able to, just a little glitch. But every time you flip the page, it adds one to the redstone signal. But as I was saying previously, if you want the repeater to get to be on a off state when it gets relocked, we need to input a redstone signal that's one greater than the one on our lecterns here. So if you want to, every time you want to add a code, right, what you can do is you can make a book like this that just goes up to page 30, or you can have 15 flip pages, or 15 pages that you can flip, right? And that'll give you up to a signal strength of 15, and it makes it more accurate for us to be able to differentiate between 1 through 12, which is the highest we can go to in our keypad here. But it can get a little bit tricky. So for example, if you're trying to make up a code, let's say we want to have a code here of 7624, you have to add 1 to that. So you need to remember not only the code, but you need to remember to add 1 to those when you're adding them into the lecterns here. So 7, this would have to be 8. 6, this would have to be 7. 2, this would have to be signal strength of 3. And then 4, this would have to be a signal strength of 5. And this one goes up to an extra one. I forgot I have 5 digits here. But, right, it gets more complicated. And then you have to remember, while you're inside the actual lectern and the pages here, you need to remember that you need to divide the top rightmost page. So what I would recommend doing, and what I actually did down here, in order to make it easier, is I would number the pages like this, where you add 1 to them. So that way, whenever you're going back and trying to input a new code, it's easier and more convenient for you to be able to, just flip through the pages. For example, here, if I want to make it 7, I just flip back to page 7. If I want to make this one 2, I flip all the way back to 2, like this, and so on and so forth. And this just makes it easier, in my opinion, for you to be able to achieve that whenever it comes to adding in different codes, updating your codes, so that way you can keep your secure lock secure. You know what I mean? And lastly, so up to page 18, this would be a signal strength of 9. I'm sorry, page 18. Yeah, so this will correlate to a signal strength of 10 in our interface here. But the problem with that is, again, that usually keypads go from 1 through 9 and then 0 at the bottom there. We don't really, these would be like asterisks and pound. And I don't really want to include that inside of my code. I just want it to be nothing but numbers. So that's why on that page, I have it numbered as not applicable inside quotations, because technically this would be page 10, or this would be number 10 on the keypad. But you don't really, it would be kind of confusing to have 1 0 10. You would mistake the 10 for 1 0 again. So that's why I put it as not applicable. This next page flip will then be on the this would be a signal strength of 10, which means that on our keypad it will correspond to input of 11, but I'm calling that 0, so that's why I named this one 0, and I have in parentheses 11 there. And then again here, it's not applicable because I'm not gonna be using it, but technically inside parentheses there, it would be signal. It would be on our keypad number 12, and the rest of the numbers can't be used because I didn't hook that up there. So that should be everything here. I know it was a lot and it was kind of boring and it wasn't very well edited because I couldn't edit it. So again, if you guys enjoyed, please remember to leave a like, comment, subscribe, turn on bell notifications just to help me fund a new PC, because I want to be able to push out better content than this, and I was just getting better at it, but then I ended up messing up stuff, and then here we are again with our final code. In case I never see any of your wonderful faces again, I hope you have an amazing rest of your lives. Until next time, it was Zombie.